Hi, my name is Dave Greenwell. I am one of the owners of Prodigy Disc Inc. I'm also the holder of 20 various PDGA world titles and was a 1995 inductee into the Disc Golf Hall of Fame. And this is what's in my bag. All right, I'm going to start with my putters. And at Prodigy Disc we have 4 putters. We have a PA1, a PA2, a PA3, and a PA4. And ironically enough, I have one of each in my bag. The PA1 is mainly for heavy wind conditions. I putt with it anytime I have a big headwind. It's a little bit more overstable putter. I like this particular one because it's a little bit softer. The PA2 that I have was one of the very first putters that I used, and it is the one that I throw the most. And it flies really straight, and I like this one for just straight putts into just a slight headwind. I have a PA3, which is the most stout of my putters, and I throw this one when I have to throw Anheuser shots that I need to pan out. So it's just a little bit more overstable than my PA2. And last but not least in the putter line is a 157 PA4. All of my other putters are heavy, but I like this one for uphill putts, tailwind putts, and low ceiling putts. It flies very straight, and I really like my PA4. Next I'm going to go to my mid-ranges, which I carry several mid-ranges. I'm pretty fond of them. I'm going to start with my M4s. I have a 300 series M4 that weighs 180 grams. It's fairly straight flying. I use this one if it's very windy and I need a straight shot that I want to sit down a little bit quicker. I've actually turned into a light disc fan over the past handful of years. I'm currently 62 years old and been doing this for a long time, and I was one of those guys in the beginning that thought that I needed the heaviest disc available, which you kind of did for the overstability aspect of it, but with all of the new technology, light plastic is a way more viable option, and it's much easier to throw for people that have declining power or people who just really haven't developed the power yet. So if you haven't thrown any of our light discs, you really need to give them a try. They're really easy to throw. And one of those is the 350 RX M4. This disc only weighs 147 grams. But if it is relatively calm or a favorable wind, I can put just a little bit of hyzer on this disc and it just stands up and goes dead straight. It's really a nice disc. I've got a new M4 that we just came out with, the 400G Lite. It is a little bit stiffer than the 350 RX and a little bit more overstable. And you cannot take this disc for granted and think because it weighs 158 grams that it's going to turn over, because it really doesn't. It holds whatever line you put on it, and it's really a nice disc. Next is my 350 RX M3, which is just a little bit more overstable than the M4, and this disc, it flies really true. Whatever angle you put on it, it holds it, and is probably my favorite catch disc of all time. It only weighs 151 grams, but every time I throw this disc with somebody, they can't believe that it weighs 151 grams because it doesn't fly light. It's just easy to throw. The next disc is a 300 series M3, and it's 180 grams as well. And I use this the same as I do the other ones, but just for a little bit heavier wind scenario and a little bit more distance control. That extra weight helps it get to the ground quicker. And last in the M3s, this is a 750 M3. It weighs 179, and this thing for me is very overstable. I use this mainly in heavy wind, or if I want a pretty big right to left shot, or I also throw some of my thumber shots with that. I know a lot of people are used to seeing the hook thumb called a thumber, but this is actually a thumber. It's like throwing a 2-finger, only you throw it off of your thumb. and it's a very predictable disc, and also for distance control. This is the first M2 that I've ever thrown in our line, because I just didn't really need something any more overstable than the M3, I thought. And this 400G Lite in the M2, it weighs 157 grams, but it's still really overstable for a lightweight disc. And once again, these lighter discs are just easier to throw. They don't hook up, they don't start reaching for the ground as soon as you let go of it. So for all you guys that like a little bit more overstable mid-range, this is a really good disc at 157. And the last of my mid-ranges is, I think I throw this disc as much as anything because it's so daggone pretty. It is just a beautiful disc. It kind of looks like a psychedelic camouflage as far as the coloring goes, but it is 180 gram 750 M1, and this thing is a meat hook. It is, if I have a big wind in my face and I want a predictable disc for a mid-range, this is the disc that I go to. Next, I'm going to go to my drivers, and I have just a handful of drivers here because I just don't need that many. Start with my M1. I have a not an M1, I'm sorry, it's a D1. But this one weighs 148 grams, and it is Prodigy Air. And this disc isn't super overstable, but if I put hyzer on it, it goes straight for a while and then it goes left. And this lightweight disc, once again, is really easy to throw. This D1 is 400G. It weighs 164 grams, and for me, it's anytime I need a spike shot or just an overstable driver, this is the disc that I reach for. It's great in any wind conditions, but particularly in heavy wind, I will use this D1. Next, I have a 400G Lite D3. This one only weighs 150 grams and is perfect for that hyzer flip shot. I can put just a little bit of hyzer, and if it's not a heavy in-your-face wind, it'll just stand up and fly for a long way before it still finishes left. I have another 400 Lite D3 here that weighs 157 grams. But that extra 7 grams for this disc makes it a little bit more overstable. So I mean, if I put hyzer on this, it holds a gradual hyzer and just continues on that line until it hits the ground. And last but not least is one of my favorite roller discs of all time. This is a D4, but this particular one was hand trimmed. A lot of our discs are done with a device that I can't really talk about, but this one was hand trimmed, and I love the color, and it rolls a mile. I can stand it up, not completely, but at about a 65-degree angle, and it will hold that line until it falls down. And some of my favorite discs that I have here that we make are the fairway drivers. And I'm going to start with the newest one, and a disc that I hadn't really thrown much until we came out with the 400G Lite. And this is an F2. This F2 weighs 156 grams. And if I put any hyzer on it at all, it's going to go left. If I put a little anhyzer, it goes straight for quite a while before it goes left. And if I put a big anhyzer, it'll hold it for quite a while before it finishes left. This might be my favorite straight flying disc. If it's not real windy, the 350 RX F3 at 158 grams is amazing. It's a disc that I can put a little bit of hyzer on and have it flatten, and it just continues straight for most of the flight and usually finishes just slightly left. But most of our drivers in the heavyweights and most of our fairway drivers in the heavyweights, if I put hyzer on them, I just don't have quite enough snap or arm speed to make them stand up, and they usually go left on me a little bit quicker than I want. But with this lightweight disc, it just flattens out perfectly and is really, really easy to throw. Great disc. This is just a newer version of that same disc. I usually keep 2 of them. That one is slightly beat up, so I can put a little more hyzer on it. This one is brand new, and I can throw this one flat and come out with the same flight. Next is the 350 RX F5. Now this one is just a tiny bit less overstable than the F3, but I'll use this disc for shots of between, say, 190 and 250. I use the F3 for shots between like 250 and 300. Another one of those discs that I can put just a little bit of hyzer and it stands up, or it's actually a pretty good backhand roller disc as well. And I have a little bit heavier 400G F5. This disc weighs 167, and this disc, for a lot of these really fast arm guys, this disc would be a slight turnover disc, but for me this one just goes straight and then just finishes slightly left. So if it's a little bit heavier wind, I'll use this disc. And the last of my F series is a 400G Lite F5, and we just came out with this recently, and I'm telling you, this is a game changer. It's another one of those really straight flying discs, and I will choose this disc if the surface at the end of the fairway is a little bit rocky, or if it might be something where the disc could get torn up a little bit. The 350 RX is a little bit softer plastic, so I would use this one in that scenario. Last but not least is our H series. For anybody that hasn't thrown the H1, the H1 is, in my 35 years of playing disc golf, the most overstable disc that I have thrown. It stays in the bag, but it only gets pulled out if I need a spike hyzer or if I want it to turn left before I let go. I mean, seriously, this thing is unbelievably overstable. I've never really been a great sidearm thrower, but this disc allows me to throw sidearm because it is so predictably overstable that I can put a little anhyzer on this and it's going to come out of it. So all you fast arm guys that think that you have to have the most overstable disc to be in the game, this is your disc. I've got an H3 here that weighs 149 grams in the 400G Lite, and I have seen many a player, including Will Schustrick and Dutch Napier and just many of these guys that have pretty fast arms, throw this disc, and if you put hyzer on this disc, whether it's sidearm or backhand, it's going to hold the angle. It's going to, if you put a backhand hyzer, it's going left. If you put a sidearm, it's going right. It is really an amazing disc, but much easier to throw than the heavyweight discs. The last one got kind of buried here. This is actually an F7. This is a heavier F7, and this is made out of 750 plastic. This thing weighs 173 grams, and I think it will probably end up being the best backhand roller disc I've ever thrown because it's really stout. And well, a lot of times when you throw a backhand roller disc, when it hits the ground, it tends to bend a little bit. And this thing is stiff enough that when it hits the ground, I think it's just going to continue on and it's not going to lose its momentum. So a little bit of hyzer on this disc for a flight shot, and it just goes dead straight. So that's what's in my bag, and I'm telling you, light is where it's at. If you're young, if you're old, if you're inexperienced or losing power, give it a shot. It's really helped my game.
Yeah.